Wilson here in our studio with Matthew Cox. Thank you for joining us on our Fox Local app, fox13news.com. Matthew, how are you? Good to see you.
Great.
So glad to have you. You are a first, as I told our viewers here a moment ago. Haven't had a convicted felon here on Fox 13 Unscripted, but you have quite the resume. We want to show our viewers a little bit, tell a little bit about you. And this is why you're here. 42 counts, Matthew, of title fraud, mortgage fraud, Social Security fraud, and wire fraud that the government says totaled about $55 million. You were sentenced to 26 years in prison and ended up serving just under 13, I think you told me, right?
Yes. You
are now a podcaster, an author, a spokesperson as well. What are you thinking now? It's been, I know you said probably about 5 years since you have been out. What has your life been like lately?
I started a podcast, a true crime podcast, because when I was incarcerated, I wrote around 22 or 23 true crime stories, and I wrote 7 books. And I got out, I started a podcast, I started doing speaking engagements, and I work with Home Title Lock.
Yeah. Well, why was it so easy to get away with for many years as you did?
Well, I started working in the mortgage industry in the late 90s. And by the early 2000s, subprime loans had come out, and those loans were fairly easy to do. This was before, what they called liar loans. And, there was very little, they weren't checking a lot of the documents. So people in the office that I worked at were altering documents and getting people mortgages. So I started to develop that skill set where I was able to change W-2s, pay stubs, verifications of rent, bank statements, that sort of thing, in order to get my clients, the borrowers, approved.
And when you say you started doing that, how did that come about? Because I think that's the point where most of us will say, well, wait a minute, you did what? Because I'm sure it probably didn't come so easily and quickly for you.
I have a degree in fine arts. It came pretty easily for me, but it was actually something that was happening in the office, and the manager of the company or of the office that I worked for is actually the person that first suggested I alter a document in order to get my client approved for a loan. That was a mistake. The fact that loan went through, it emboldened me. And then I did another one and another loan, altered another document, and continued to get commission checks. And so I became very relaxed with the whole situation very easily, and started making money. And eventually I opened up my own mortgage company. I ran that for a few years before I got in trouble. I was charged with wire fraud, and I became a felon. I was no longer allowed to run the mortgage company. And at that point, I had a choice to make, and it was, you move back in with your parents, you claim bankruptcy, you start your life over, or I could lean into, committing mortgage fraud, which is what I'd been doing. And so at that point, I really started committing title fraud. I started altering titles. I started recording false titles. I started recording properties I would buy properties for $50,000 or $100,000, and I would record the sales of those properties at $200,000.
And these were properties that you didn't own, correct?
No, these are properties I'd buy. I'd buy a property for $50,000 and record the value of the property or the sale at $200,000, $250,000 right here in Ybor City. And what happened was I was doing various types of title fraud, and one of the title frauds I was committing was I was making synthetic identities, or I was simply stealing homeowners' names, and I would then transfer the title or I would then go in and, in some cases, transfer a title from the true homeowner's name into a synthetic identity's name or a stolen identity's name, and then I would satisfy the loans on that house, and I would refinance the house multiple times, close with different title companies, obtain those loans, those mortgages, place that money into bank accounts, and then remove the money in cash.
what's your mindset when all this is going on? Because I know you said you had to make a decision, and you made a conscious decision to do this. But did you still have part of your conscience saying, "Oh boy, I really shouldn't be doing this," or at that point were you just so fueled by what you were getting away with?
I think I was just, like I said, I was just emboldened by the fact that I was getting away with it. I loved the idea of beating the system. It was partially motivated by greed, and there was a significant amount of money being made for someone that had limited options. So I continued to commit fraud. I did that for several years. I believe the FBI said I think they said I had committed title fraud on 109 houses in Ybor City. I had borrowed $11.5 million. At that point, one of my associates got arrested. He cooperated. There was a task force formed, and it was handed over to the FBI. FBI was coming to arrest me. I was already on federal probation. I had already been charged once. Luckily, I didn't go to prison in that case. And I had a friend that was a sheriff's deputy at the time, and he came to me and told me that the FBI was coming to arrest me, and I went on the run for 3 years.
Yeah. I want to hear a little bit more about that. One of the reasons you're here, too, is there's been a lot of reform since you have served your time and since, of course, the housing market collapse and, of course, and all of the mortgage fraud. And we actually have a law that was passed in Florida that was effective July 1st. I'm going to show you this. It's a new Florida law that what it does is it requires the counties to have these title change alerts. So if there is a change to it, you have to go onto your county's website. Right now, we looked it up. We've got Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, Hernando, Manatee, and Citrus. So I'm asking those of you, if you live in any of those counties, Google this. Google title change alert or property title fraud in those counties. I wish we had a link for you, but the links are different for each of the websites. But if you look up on that website, then you can sign up for an alert. And what that will do is that will let you know when there's been a change recorded. But I know you were pushing for much more reform because this is not going to stop any of the crime. It's just going to let us know when it happens, right?
Right. And so as far as a title thief is concerned, getting caught in the middle of the scam is the worst possible thing that could happen, right? So if I were to go find your house, it's worth $800,000, $500,000, whatever, and I were to transfer the title out of your name into a synthetic identity's name, let's say, and then I were to start borrowing against the house or maybe put it up for sale, who knows, and then you were notified, that would give you the opportunity to catch me. But once the criminal is caught, you contact the authorities, maybe they track me down, they figure it out, unlikely, but let's assume they do, they grab me, the title to your house been transferred into a stolen identity's name or a synthetic identity's name. How do you get it back into your name? Right. The law enforcement isn't going to help you. You've been notified and you caught me, but now you have to go out and you have to hire an attorney. You have to go through the legal process of getting that loan or getting that title placed back in your name. What if I've already borrowed mortgages against it? Now those mortgage companies are trying to foreclose on you.
And they're going to want that money.
They want that money, and they're going to come after your house, and you have to hire an attorney to try and stop that process. It's for the average person, if they don't have the means to go out and spend $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 and fight the mortgage companies from foreclosing on their property, then what do you do?
Yeah.
Most people are just not, they're not attorneys. They're not equipped to handle that.
Sure. And this is something that's still happening. Sadly.
It happens it just Graceland.
Yeah. Yep, it is indeed. Let's take a quick break. We're talking with Matthew Cox, who spent almost 13 years in prison for mortgage and title fraud. More secrets from him. He's also going to tell us a little bit more about his time served. And you made good use of that time. I know you mentioned some of your stories that you have helped write. But he's written a lot of crime stories that are real stories based on folks that you met in prison that are quite fascinating indeed. Much more with Matthew Cox when we come right back. Don't move. Welcome back to Fox 13 Unscripted here with Matthew Cox. We are talking title fraud. We are talking about time served, yes, in prison. Matt is a convicted felon. I want to show you his resume. We're talking a little bit about how to protect yourself, too, because Matt knows because he was involved with mortgage fraud, 42 counts of title mortgage, Social Security, and wire fraud. The government says about $55 million in all. He was sentenced in, what was it, 2012? for 20.
It was
Yeah.
2006.
It was '06 for 26 years. You served about 13. He is now talking about a number of his stories. He's written a number of books based on his time that was in jail, when he was in jail as well. And you served your time in Florida, right?
Yes, in Coleman.
In Coleman, Sumter County.
Yes.
And that was a medium security prison, right?
I was in the medium. There's 5 prisons there. I was in the medium for 3 years, and then I was in the low for 9 years, and then I spent some time in.
I'm sure
county jails.
everyone asks you, what was it like in prison? But give us a sense for maybe those first couple of days when it really set in. What were those days like and nights?
It was in the prison. The first day I got there, someone had been stabbed in the rec yard. And I just remember thinking, I'm not cut out for this. Like, you've made this is a really bad place to be, and this is not my environment. So
All of a sudden, all those decisions you'd made all the years prior start coming back to you, huh?
Kind of knew it before that, but by that point, it was like, wow, you've really painted yourself into a corner here.
So you stay out of the rec yard for a while, right?
That was my first thought. Don't go to the rec yard.
Yeah, and then find the library, right, or start writing, which is what you did.
That is what I did. I actually taught GED, and I taught the real estate course. They have what's called the ACE courses, Adult Continuing Education courses, and they're taught by the inmates. And I taught the real estate course for 9 years. That seems funny, right?
It does seem funny, but hey, hopefully we get some realtors out of there. But so you were starting to hear. You started befriending, of course, a lot of those who were in their serving time with you, and you started hearing all these stories. When was the moment when you realized, hey, I better start capturing some of these stories? Because were you already kind of working on one of your own at first?
I'd been on Dateline and American Greed. I'd been approached by several authors, and I started writing so I decided I'm just going to write my own memoir. By the time I had finished my memoir, I realized I really liked it. And I'd heard so amazing stories, but these guys are locked up, and it's hard to write your own story. And so I started writing these guys' stories. I just started approaching them and saying, hey, I heard you got a great story. Would you be interested in me possibly writing like a synopsis of it, something around 20, 30 pages? And some of those turned into full-blown books, about 6 or 7 of them. And some were just ended up saying synopses. And I got some guys in Rolling Stone magazine. I optioned some people's life rights for them. And so, yeah, it was a way to pass the time. And it was something I realized I really enjoyed and probably, absolutely, should have been doing that when I was free and not committing fraud.
Sure. And the War Dog story, that turned out to be something a lot of people know, of course.
Yeah, I was locked up with Ephraim Deveroli, which is played by Jonah Hill in the movie War Dogs. So I was locked up with him, and I approached him, and I ended up writing his memoir. And at the same time, the movie was being made, so they ended up making the movie, and we released the book at the same time.
Okay. What, story after story I'm sure you heard when you were starting to get there. I mean, what else do you remember about some of those? Because once word started getting around and they said, hey, we got an author here, he's really good with words, and Rolling Stone and Forbes called you a brilliant writer as well. I mean, people were recognizing your writing. How was that going? How was that in the prison where people literally were lining up wanting you to tell their story?
I mean, it was great. It was almost like, this sounds silly, but it was almost like being a celebrity. Like I've got books that had been published. They're on the shelves of Barnes and Nobles. I've got guys in Rolling Stone magazine. I've got articles are being written about me being in prison, writing stories. So guys are lining up to tell me their stories, and I got to cherry pick those stories, which was, it's great. It was probably the best possible situation I could have been in.
Do you think that, because clearly you have a thing for writing, I mean, would that have been something, I know it's so hard to look back now, had your life taken a different path, had you made some different decisions 20 or so years ago, what do you think writing and true crime would have ever been part of your career had you not gone down the path you did?
I always loved crime movies. I had, The Italian Job, Catch Me If You Can, Matchstick Men. I mean, those were some of my favorite movies. So would it have been? I'd like to think so, but who knows?
Yeah. Before we go, we just got about a minute left. Your message to Anybody who's been a victim, say, of mortgage fraud or home title fraud, obviously you probably have some regrets. I can tell you have a conscience for sure. What do you look back now on your life at where it put you and how you went through with regards to what you did?
Well, I mean, it's funny. I absolutely have a ton of regrets. But, you know, in the end, I'm making the best of the rest of my life and trying to kind of fix or help people that I had put in harm's way so that they realize really the risk that they're at as far as their home's title and thieves like me that are out there, looking to prey on them.
And the best thing to do is to be aware. Sign up for the alerts. If you want to lock your home title down, you can do that. But most people, even if you're not buying or selling, that's something they probably don't even think about, do they?
No, everybody thinks they're safe. What you really have to monitor your title. You monitor your credit card. I bet every time you use your credit card, you get a little bing and it says you used your credit card.
Right.
You have to monitor your title because nobody is looking out for you.
Sure. I want to show you this graphic again with regards to the Florida law. So, lawmakers here in the state of Florida passed this new law. Again, it was to be effective July 1st. And what it does is it requires counties, property appraisers, to make it available, a title alert change, so that you can sign up for it. It's effective January, or I keep saying January because I see the one, but it's July 1st. You actually do have to go up and sign up, either your email or a text. I did mine in Pinellas County. You sign up for a text with your phone. So you go to your county's website, and again, I apologize, I don't have the same link for you. I hopefully in another year or so, within sometime soon, they will standardize this sort of a link with each of these on there. But Hillsborough, Pinellas, Pasco, Hernando, Manatee, and Citrus are the only ones in our area as of right now where you can do this. But you actually have to be proactive. Go up to your county property appraiser or your county website and sign up for those alerts if you can find it. And again, we'll try to post those as well. And then that way you're at least notified when there is some sort of a change to your property.
You're notified, but I'm not sure what you do once you're notified. I would suggest you sign up for home title lock. That's really, it's less than $1 a day. They become an advocate for you. They sign you up. They notify you. They work as an advocate for you. They correct any problems that arise for the homeowner. I mean, it's hands free. They just take care of everything for you. That's my suggestion. I'm not sure how much I trust the government and to look out for my best interests.
Sure. Especially now. We've got one more quick break with Matthew Cox. We'll be right back. Don't move. And welcome back to Fox 13 Unscripted, a live streaming show here at 7 o'clock. We have Matthew Cox, who spent almost 13 years in federal prison for mortgage and title fraud, sharing some of his secrets. You were also on the run for, was it almost 3 years, a little over 3 years, from the FBI, from the marshal's office. And I know Hollywood always fantasizes about what it's like being on the run, but what was it really like? I mean, that had to be... Were you thinking, I'm good, I'm going to be able to get away with this? Or were you literally sleeping? Were you wide awake every night?
So normally people ask, like, you must have been so worried and concerned and the stress. And the truth is, and I hate to say this because this is not the appropriate answer, but, it was, being on the run was great. Like, it was, keep in mind, I had false passports, real passports issued by the State Department. I was able to steal people's identities and get passports in their name. I had driver's licenses issued by the state. I'd go in the DMV and get a driver's license in your name. I'm driving a car in your name, full coverage insurance in your name. I've got credit cards. So, I'd get pulled over and get tickets. I got so many tickets in one guy's name, I had to go to traffic school.
They had no idea who you were.
No idea. Well, I've got a real driver's license. Yeah. So, I wasn't concerned for 3 years. I continued to commit fraud. I borrowed another... I don't know, the number's somewhere between $3.5 to $4.5 million by going and renting someone's house, satisfying the loan on their house, borrowing 3 or 4 mortgages. In one person's name, I borrowed 6 mortgages on their house, borrowed $1.3 million in one person's name on a house that I bought for $250,000. I was actually caught in a bank one time, handcuffed, questioned by a detective. In Wachovia Bank. I don't think they're around. I don't know if they're still around.
Old North Carolina banks. We used to have them here.
Yeah, this was in South Carolina.
Yeah.
And got caught and convinced him that I hadn't done anything wrong. They allowed me to follow them back to the police station, fill out a police report, and he let me go. I went to 2 more banks, pulled out some more money, jumped in my car, and left. About a year and a half after that, I ended up getting arrested, and got arrested in Nashville, Tennessee. and was moved back to Atlanta and was prosecuted in Atlanta, where I was sentenced.
Yeah, and that when you first heard 26 years, that
It
had
was
to
a
feel
bad
like,
day.
I would bet.
It was a bad day. Yeah. Yeah. You know, the funny thing about being in prison and having done what I did was that, you know, I absolutely needed to go to prison. You know, there was no doubt that I should have been in prison, you know, and it wasn't probably until I went to prison that I started realizing like just the people that I had caused harm to had done nothing more than just make the mistake of crossing my path. I drove through your neighborhood. I looked at the house. I said, I'm going to go look up at that house. I go look it up, transfer the deed, borrow a bunch of money against it, walk away.
Yeah.
They hadn't done anything at all
Yeah.
other than be a doctor or a CPA who happened to have a nice house that I thought, hey, I could take that house.
Yeah. We appreciate your time. Matthew Cox is with Home Title Lock. Thank you so much for coming in. Check out his podcast as well and his books. We appreciate you coming in.
Thank you.
Thanks again. We appreciate you sharing a little bit of that. And hopefully somebody learns something, can protect themselves as well from people like he used to be.
Yeah.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you. Hope to see you on TV.